The sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, painting the valley in a mix of gold and shadow. Elias stood at the edge of his farm, looking over the fields that had been in his family for generations. Every furrowed line in the soil carried a memory, a story of hard work and sacrifice. The air smelled of earth and pine. Yet beneath it, there was tension, a whisper of danger that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. For years, Elias had managed his land with quiet pride. He trusted only a few his neighbors, the occasional traveling merchant, and, most of all, Dorian, his beta. Dorian had been his companion since childhood, the one who had stood by him through seasons of hardship and moments of triumph. But loyalty was fragile, and some bonds could shatter like thin ice underfoot. That evening, Dorian approached with a sharpness in his step, his eyes glinting with anger. Elias had been counting the profits from the sale of a portion of the farm to fund repairs and improvements. He had no intention of giving Dorian any of it, not because he wished to deny him, but because it was not his right. "You will give me my share," Dorian demanded, his voice low but dangerous. "I helped you build this. I deserve it." Elias shook his head. "The farm is mine. I make the decisions. You will get nothing unless I choose to give it." Dorian's face twisted with rage. "You refuse me?" he growled. The air seemed to thicken around them, heavy with unspoken threats. "After everything I've done for you?" "Reins on." Elias met his gaze steadily, refusing to show fear. "Everything you've done does not give you ownership. I trusted you. But you've forgotten what loyalty means." For a moment, silence hung between them like a storm cloud. Then Dorian lunged, his strength fueled by anger, and struck Elias across the chest. The world erupted in pain as ribs cracked under the force. Elias fell to the ground, gasping, the taste of blood sharp in his mouth. Pain radiated through his body. Yet more than the physical hurt, there was the ache of betrayal. "You're weak," Dorian spat, stepping back. Elias tried to rise but collapsed again. The farm, the land he loved, felt alien now. The place that had always been his refuge had become a battlefield. The sun dipped below the mountains, leaving the valley in twilight, and a chill crept over his skin. As Elias struggled to stand, a sound broke through the tense quiet, a low, commanding growl that seemed to come from the mountains themselves. Shadows shifted among the trees, and a figure emerged, tall and powerful, moving with a grace that made the night air tremble. Kale, the alpha, had arrived. He stopped a few paces from Elias, his presence radiating authority. His dark hair was streaked with silver like moonlight on a stormy sea, and his eyes burned with an intensity that made the ground beneath him seem smaller. He looked at Elias with a mixture of curiosity and approval, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "You've been wronged," Kale said, his voice deep and steady, carrying a calm that made the valley itself listen. "And yet, you still stand. That is unusual." Elias tried to respond, but his words were lost in pain. His body ached, his chest felt heavy, and the betrayal of someone he had trusted left a bitter taste. Yet, despite the throbbing of his ribs, he found himself staring at Kale, drawn by the quiet power that seemed to radiate from him. Dorian, realizing that he was no match for this new presence, stepped back, his bravado faltering. Who are you?" he demanded, his voice shaky. Kale's gaze swept over Dorian, piercing and cold. "I am the one who ensures balance. Those who betray the innocent will face consequences beyond their understanding." Dorian's face paled. He took a step back, uncertain, and Elias felt a flicker of hope stir in his chest. Perhaps, for the first time since the attack, he might survive the night. Kale knelt beside Elias, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. The warmth from that touch was unlike anything Elias had known, comforting, commanding, and yet strangely demanding. "You are hurt," Kale said quietly, "but I will help you. The question is, do you trust me?" Elias struggled to speak, each breath sending pain through his ribs. I don't know if I can trust anyone again." Cale's eyes softened, though the strength behind them never wavered. Trust is not given lightly. It is earned. Tonight, you have earned mine. Though the path ahead will test you far more than this one night. Elias tried to absorb the weight of Cale's words. There was something magnetic about him. Something that stirred a longing deep inside, a mixture of fear, awe, and something else he could not name. He wanted to rise, to fight, to reclaim what had been stolen. But his body would not allow it. Cale stood, towering over both Elias and the trembling Dorian. "Leave," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of one who rules not just by strength but by presence. Dorian hesitated, then fled into the shadows, his threat unfinished but hanging like a poisoned cloud over the valley. When the figure of Dorian disappeared, Cale turned back to Elias, offering him a steady hand. Elias grasped it, feeling the power in the Alpha's grip. With Cale's help, he rose unsteadily, leaning on him as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "You are stronger than you believe," Cale said. "Stronger than him, stronger than you even realize. But strength alone is not enough. You will need guidance and patience to survive what comes next." Elias nodded, wincing as the pain in his ribs flared. "And if I refuse your guidance?" he asked, trying to assert himself even in weakness. Cale's lips curved in a shadow of a smile. "Then you will learn the hard way. But I believe you will choose to stand beside me. Not because you must, but because it is the only way to reclaim what is yours." The night deepened, the valley bathed in silver moonlight. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine, earth, and the unknown. Elias looked at the farm, the place that had been his life, and he realized it was no longer just land and soil. It was a battleground of loyalty, power, and destiny. "You will heal," Cale said softly, almost as a promise to himself as much as to Elias. "And when you rise, you will face him again. And this time, you will not be alone." Elias's heart pounded, not just from pain, but from something he could not name. Fear, yes. Anger, yes. But beneath it all, a flicker of something dangerous and beautiful. Trust, perhaps, or the first stirrings of something stronger. Cale's eyes held his gaze, and for a moment, Elias felt as if he were standing on the edge of a precipice. One step could lead to freedom, or to ruin. One wrong choice, one hesitation, and everything could be lost. The night held its breath as they stood together on the frost-kissed earth. Elias's thoughts swirled with questions he did not have answers to. Who was this Alpha? And why had he come? Could he trust him? Or would this too end in betrayal? And above all, was he ready to confront the darkness that had just begun to stir in his life? The wind howled through the valley, and somewhere in the distance, the shadowed forest seemed to shift. Elias's ribs burned, but his spirit burned brighter. Whatever lay ahead, whatever battles, betrayals, or dangers, he would not face them alone. And yet, even as Cale's steady presence reassured him, Elias could not shake the feeling that this night was only the beginning. For in the darkness, something ancient watched, something patient, something powerful. And it had noticed Elias. The farm would not be safe for long, and neither would he. Cliffhanger. Elias realized that survival might not only depend on his strength, but on the Alpha, who now stood beside him. But as the shadows stirred and the wind carried distant howls, he knew one thing. Dorian's betrayal had awakened forces far older and far darker than any he had ever imagined. And soon, he would have to face them, or be consumed. The moon hung high over the valley, spilling silver light across the frost-tipped fields. Elias had barely slept since the attack. Each breath reminded him of the sharp pain in his ribs, each movement of his body a reminder of Dorian's betrayal. Yet he could not ignore the presence of Cale, who had chosen to stay nearby, watching over him as a guardian and, in ways Elias could not yet understand, something more. Cale's world was unlike anything Elias had ever known. It was a world ruled not by wealth or titles, but by strength, skill, and the unseen threads of power that connected every living being. Supernatural forces lingered in the shadows, and the mountains themselves seemed alive, breathing with ancient knowledge. "You must understand," Kale said as he led Elias along a narrow forest path. "The world you have known is fragile. Dorian is dangerous, yes, but he is only a symptom of a greater threat. Strength alone will not save you. You need control over your body, your mind, and your power." Elias stumbled, gripping his side. "And you think I can do this? I can barely walk without feeling pain." Kale's dark eyes softened for a moment. "Pain is temporary. Weakness is a choice. You have been tested, Elias. Now you will be trained." Over the next days, Kale pushed Elias beyond what he thought possible. They trained at dawn in the open fields, beneath the misty mountains, where frost clung to every blade of grass. Kale taught him to move with precision, to anticipate danger, and to sense the presence of the unseen creatures that stalked the forests. Elias discovered that his body could do things he had never imagined: jump higher, run faster, react with instincts that felt almost supernatural. Yet the training was not only physical. Kale spoke of control over emotions, over desire, over fear. He challenged Elias to confront the rage that Dorian's betrayal had ignited, to accept it, and to channel it into something useful rather than letting it consume him. Every time Elias faltered, Kale's gaze bore into him, silent and demanding. It was exhausting. And yet, Elias felt something else growing. A pull toward Kale that was impossible to ignore. Kale's presence was commanding, his voice smooth like polished stone, his touch when correcting Elias's stance firm but careful. Elias hated himself for the way his heart raced whenever Kale's hand brushed his arm. He hated the longing that rose in his chest, even as he respected and feared the Alpha. "You are resisting," Kale said one evening as they rested by a fire at the edge of the forest. The flames danced across his face, highlighting the sharp planes and dark eyes. "Resistance is natural. But understand this, Elias. Strength is not just what you can do alone. Strength comes from trust, from knowing someone else has your back when the world turns against you." Elias said nothing. Words were difficult now. Emotions tangled inside him like storm clouds. He wanted to trust Kale, wanted to lean on him, but fear still lingered. Trust had been broken before, why should it be easy now? Meanwhile, Dorian did not remain hidden. He was angry, humiliated, and desperate. Elias learned that Dorian had sought out alliances among shadowed factions that desired control over the valley, over the farm, and over anything that Elias had built. He realized that the fight was far from over. Dorian's reach had grown, and Elias had to be ready not just for another attack, but for something far darker lurking beyond the trees. The days blurred into nights, and Elias's body grew stronger. His mind, too, sharpened under Kale's guidance. He began to see patterns in the movements of the forest, to sense danger before it arrived, and to respond with a confidence that startled even him. But each step forward brought him closer to Kale, and each moment near the Alpha forced him to confront feelings he did not yet understand. Kale noticed. "You fear your own heart," he said quietly one night as they sat beneath the stars. "Do not be ashamed of what you feel. Desire is not weakness, but control. Control will determine whether you survive what comes next." Elias swallowed, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "And if I fail?" Kale's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Then I will help you rise. But you must try. You must choose to fight, to learn, and to accept what you are becoming." Their bond deepened with every lesson. Elias found himself relying on Kale's guidance, trusting his judgment even when it conflicted with his own pride. And Kale, in turn, showed a rare gentleness, a quiet patience that made Elias feel seen in ways he had never experienced. There was no rush, no pressure to name what was growing between them. It was enough that their connection was real, even if complicated. But peace was fleeting. One night, as fog rolled through the valley and cloaked the forest in silver, Dorian struck. He emerged from the shadows with a band of dark followers, their eyes glinting with cruel intent. Elias and Kael were caught off guard, though Kael's reflexes were faster. "Elias, stay behind me," Kael commanded, stepping forward to confront Dorian. But Elias, despite his pain and hesitation, felt something awaken inside him, a surge of power that Kael had helped him cultivate. He stepped forward, refusing to remain hidden. Dorian laughed, a sound that chilled the night. "You think you are strong?" he sneered. "You have no idea what you are up against." Elias's chest burned with anger, fear, and determination. For the first time, he realized that he did not need to rely solely on Kael's strength. He had power too, raw and untamed, waiting to be shaped. The battle began in the fog-laden forest. Shadows moved, whispers carried through the trees, and the air seemed thick with tension. Elias faced Dorian, muscles taut, senses alert. Dorian lunged with the intent to strike, but Elias reacted instinctively, blocking and countering with the skills Kael had taught him. Kael fought nearby, a storm of precision and strength. Yet he did not intervene directly with Elias. He wanted Elias to face Dorian on his own, to test the control and power that had been awakened. The fight escalated. Dorian's dark followers circled, casting long, shifting shadows, but Elias no longer felt helpless. With each move, he grew more confident, more aware of the rhythm of battle, and with each glance toward Kael, he felt that unspoken connection, reassurance, challenge, and something more. Then, something unexpected happened. As Elias blocked a strike, the forest itself seemed to respond. Shadows twisted, winds shifted, and an ancient, unseen force stirred, as if awakened by the emotions and energy of the battle. Elias felt it in his bones. The forest was alive, watching, testing him. Kael noticed it too. "Stay focused," he warned, his voice sharp. "Do not let it distract you. Control your power, Elias. Control yourself." Elias nodded, struggling to balance his fear, anger, and the strange awe that filled him. He struck with precision, forcing Dorian back step by step, and yet, the forest seemed to thrum with anticipation, as if the outcome was not just about the fight, but about something far greater, awakening in the world around them. Finally, Dorian stumbled, his arrogance giving way to fear. Elias raised a hand to strike, but before he could move, a deep, grinding voice echoed through the trees, low and powerful, like stone against stone. "You dare awaken me?" The ground shook, and shadows twisted unnaturally around them. Dorian froze, his confidence shattered. Kael's eyes widened, and Elias felt the chill of fear that had nothing to do with Dorian. This voice belonged to something ancient, something far older and more powerful than any human, or even any alpha. Elias's chest heaved. Pain, fear, and exhilaration raced through him. He realized that Dorian's betrayal had done more than hurt him. It had awakened forces that were beyond his understanding. Forces that now regarded him with scrutiny, and perhaps with judgment. Kael stepped closer, placing a hand on Elias's shoulder. "You have done well," he said quietly, "but this is only the beginning. Control your power, Elias. Trust me. And prepare yourself, for what comes next will demand more than you have ever imagined." Elias nodded, still trembling. His eyes met Kael's, and for the first time, he felt that he was not alone, not in the battle, not in the pain, and not in the strange stirrings of his heart. The fog thickened, curling around them like silver fingers, and the distant howl of the forest whispered promises of trials yet to come. Elias understood, in that moment, that the path ahead was dangerous, dark, and uncertain, and yet, he felt a spark of hope, fierce and bright, that he had not known he possessed. He would not allow Dorian or anything else to break him again, and with Kael by his side, he felt that perhaps, just perhaps, he could survive the darkness that was rising. Cliffhanger. As Elias and Kael stood together, The shadows of the ancient forest shifted, and the voice whispered again, "You have been noticed. The world has changed. Choose wisely, human." Elias realized that the trials ahead would test not just his strength, but his heart, and that the bond forming between him and KL would determine whether he survived or was consumed. The forest was silent, yet every sound seemed louder than life itself. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the heartbeat of Elias as it pounded in his chest. He stood beside Kale, the alpha, feeling the tension between them as keenly as the chill in the night air. The shadows of the ancient forest had shifted since their last encounter, moving almost as if alive. Watching. Waiting. Elias could still feel the sting of Dorian's betrayal, the sharp ache of broken ribs, and the lingering fear that he might never be safe. Yet, beneath all of it, a fire burned in unfamiliar strength, born from pain, struggle, and the guidance Kale had given him. He was no longer the same man who had faced Dorian weeks ago. He was stronger, sharper, more aware of the power that pulsed within him. Kale's presence beside him was both grounding and thrilling. There was a tension in the way Kale's gaze held him, a quiet authority that demanded respect, yet carried warmth and unspoken promise. Elias had learned to rely on Kale, to trust his judgment, and even in moments of fear, to draw courage from him. And now, as the forest seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, Elias realized that he had come to need Kale in a way that went beyond survival. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The shadows twisted and coiled, forming shapes that were more than human, more than animal. From the darkness, a colossal figure emerged, the ancient wolf king of the valley, a spectral being bound to the land for centuries. Its eyes glowed like molten silver, and its presence radiated a power that made the earth itself shiver. "You have awakened me." The voice rumbled, deep and resonant, carrying the weight of time itself. "Mortals, you dare challenge the balance?" Elias felt fear spike through him, sharp and consuming. But Kale's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "Do not falter," Kale said, his voice calm yet commanding. "You have power now, Elias. Trust it. Trust yourself. I will guide you. But the choice is yours." The Wolf King circled them, its massive form looming and shifting like smoke and stone. Elias could feel its scrutiny, an ancient intelligence probing his heart, measuring his worth. Dorian had retreated to the edges of the forest, watching in fear and awe, realizing that the power Elias now wielded was far beyond his comprehension. "You have been chosen," the Wolf King continued, its voice echoing like thunder through the trees. "Chosen to wield strength beyond mortal measure. But with choice comes consequence. Will you rise or be broken?" Elias swallowed hard, the weight of the words pressing down on him. He felt every scar, every ache, every betrayal from the past weeks. He realized that this moment was more than a battle. It was a test not of strength alone, but of courage, wisdom, and heart. Kyle leaned closer, his voice a low whisper in Elias's ear. "You are ready. Trust your power, Elias. Trust yourself. And trust me." Elias's chest burned, not just from fear, but from the energy coursing through him. He raised his hands, feeling the raw strength he had cultivated, the instincts Kale had awakened in him. He did not fight recklessly. Instead, he focused, drawing on the training, the patience, and the inner calm Kale had taught him. The Wolf King lunged, a blur of spectral silver and shadow. Elias dodged, weaving through the trees with precision, countering instinctively, guiding his power with intent rather than anger. Kale fought nearby, a force of authority and skill, but he never interfered directly with Elias, letting him grow, letting him prove himself. Dorian, desperate and reckless, attempted one final attack from the shadows. Elias met him with calm focus, moving with a strength he had never known he possessed. He did not strike to harm, but to subdue, channeling the power into containment rather than destruction. Dorian stumbled, forced back by a magical barrier of Elias's own creation, an energy he had not realized he could wield until this very moment. The Wolf King paused, observing Elias with eyes that burned like stars. The ancient force seemed to recognize something: discipline, courage, heart. Slowly, the massive spectral creature bowed its head, acknowledging Elias's strength and the purity of his intent. The danger was not gone, but respect had been earned. Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing Elias's arm, grounding him. "You have passed the first trial," Kale said, pride and warmth in his voice, "but there is more ahead. Always more. Power is a path, not a destination." Elias looked at Kale, and for the first time, he felt no fear, only clarity. He understood that his strength was not just physical, not just supernatural. It was trust, loyalty, and the choices he made. He had faced betrayal, pain, and fear. And he had emerged not broken, but transformed. The fire of desire that had been quietly burning between them throughout the journey now flared. Kale's presence, steady, commanding, yet patient, was impossible to ignore. Elias felt a deep longing, a need to be close, to share not just strength, but trust and heart. And Kale, noticing the shift, did not pull away. Instead, he mirrored Elias's steps, their proximity charged with unspoken understanding. "You have a choice," Kale said softly, his eyes holding Elias's in a gaze that seemed to reach into his soul. "You may return to your farm, live as you did before, independent, but vulnerable. Or you may stand with me, embrace the path of strength, loyalty, and the bond we share." Elias thought of the farm, of the fields, of the life he had loved. And then he thought of the pain, the betrayal, the lessons, and the fire that Kale had awakened in him. He realized that true strength was not in isolation, but in connection, in choosing who to trust, who to stand beside, and who to share his life with. He stepped forward, closer to Kale, meeting his hand halfway. "I choose to stand with you," Elias said, voice steady. "Not because I must, but because I want to. Not as someone beneath you, but as your equal." Kale's expression softened, a rare, genuine smile breaking the serious lines of his face. "Then we rise together," he said, his voice quiet but full of conviction, their hands clasped firmly, not as master and follower, but as partners, equal in strength, heart, and purpose. The shadows of the forest seemed to shift again, this time in harmony with their bond. The ancient Wolf King retreated into the depths of the trees, leaving a lingering sense of power and vigilance. Elias understood that the world was still dangerous, that challenges would come, and that vigilance was eternal. Yet, for the first time, he felt unafraid. Dorian lay bound by Elias's power at the forest's edge, watching helplessly as the man he had betrayed rose above him. There was no hatred in Elias's gaze, only the quiet calm of someone who had faced darkness, pain, and betrayal, and had emerged stronger. The valley itself seemed to breathe with a new energy, as if recognizing the shift in balance. Elias and Kale walked back to the farm together, side by side, their steps synchronized, their hearts aligned. The farm was still theirs, Elias's legacy, his home, but now it was also a place of strength, unity, and protection. The first light of dawn painted the valley in gold, warming the frost-tipped fields. Elias looked over the land, feeling a sense of completion and anticipation. His trials had not ended, they would never truly end, but he now faced them with power, guidance, and a bond that could withstand any challenge. He glanced at KL, and their eyes met. No words were necessary. Trust had been earned, strength had been proven, and hearts had been opened. Elias realized that the greatest victory was not in defeating Dorian or awakening powers, but in finding balance within himself, and in choosing to share that balance with someone who truly understood him. The wind carried a distant howl from the mountains, a reminder that the world was vast, ancient, and full of mystery. Yet Elias no longer felt fear. With KL at his side, He was ready for whatever would come together, as equals, as partners, bound by choice, trust, and the fire that had been awakened in both of them.